Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight and taking time out of your evening. My name is Eric Della Bosca. I work here at the library as a program officer in public programs. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 Fellowship Program Information Session. State Library Victoria acknowledges the traditional lands of all the Victorian Aboriginal clans and their cultural practices and knowledge systems. We recognise that our collection holds traditional cultural knowledge belonging to Indigenous communities in Victoria and around the country. We support communities to protect the integrity of this information gathered from their ancestors in the colonial period. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, who have handed down systems of practice to each new generation for millennia. I'd also like to acknowledge Maxine Briggs, Courier Librarian, and the team at the Victorian Indigenous Research Centre at the library. So, a very warm welcome to all of you. A welcome to our speakers here tonight, our fellowship partnerships, current and former fellows, our Auslan interpreter, Gabriel, and most importantly, those of you who are interested in applying for a fellowship. We're here to provide you with helpful tips and information and give you a forum to meet the team and ask us questions. I hope this session will help you feel encouraged, prepared, and confident about submitting an application. So the format for tonight's session. I'm going to be speaking tonight about the aims of the fellowship program. I'm going to be speaking on access, eligibility, and criteria and the selection process. After me, we'll hear from Public Programs Manager, Tara Prowse, who will give you an overview of key dates and the 14 fellowship and some more details on the 14 fellowships on offer, as well as some cultural protocols for the program. We're delighted to be joined, testing, great. We are delighted to be joined by some guest speakers who will talk more detail about specific fellowships and residencies. We'll hear from current fellow, the 2024 Creative Fellow, Dr. Amara Rahim, who will talk to us about her project and experience so far as a fellow. Bridie Flynn, Senior Collections Curator here at the library, will talk about the role of the liaison librarian and collection access. We'll also hear from Marcus O'Donnell from Balderson Studio and Evelyn Matheny from George Moira Foundation. In the final 20 to 30 minutes, depending on timing, we're going to have a time for questions and answers. So this is where you can ask some questions. For those of you in person, we're just going to put our hand up and we'll come over with a mic. For those of you on the live stream, we have a Slido where you can add your questions to. So we're just going to be going back and forth in person and online. If we don't have time to answer all questions tonight, you can follow up via email to the fellows@slv.vic.gov.au, and we are pretty quick to respond to questions on that email. I'll have more of the contact details here at the end. Sounds like the ocean. So, next up is our vision and aims of the fellowship program. Library fellowship recipients have contributed significantly to the creative and intellectual life of Victoria. The fellowships are one of the library's long-standing and flagship programs. Access to libraries can change lives. Access to information can combat misinformation. Did you want me to swap to one of the handheld microphones? Number 2 working. That's so much better. I might just start again from the vision and aims. Library fellowship recipients have contributed significantly to the creative and intellectual life of Victoria. The fellowships are one of the library's long-standing and flagship programs. Access to libraries can change lives. Access to information can combat misinformation. And creatives, researchers, historians, and artists of all types are a key part of communicating and opening up libraries to our many communities and beyond. Our key aims of the fellowship programs are to support and nurture creative and research endeavours in a fair and equitable way. We want to enable creatives to use the State Library collection and for the library to be a hub for creative and research activity. We want to create opportunities for the wider community to discover and access the library's collections through fellows' works in progress and final outcomes. We're committed to inclusivity, diversity, and accessibility. We aim to support projects that reimagine and bring the collection to life in new and innovative ways, with an openness to ideas that critically engage and challenge us as an institution. Providing programs that can serve as a source of benefit to communities is important to the library. Next, I want to talk about access for the fellowship program. The library are working with Arts Access Victoria with a view to provide support for the applicants who are deaf or disabled. We are making improvements to access for the fellowship program application process and residency experience. We use the Smarty Grants online portal for fellowship applications. Some of you may have already begun this process. In this portal, you have the opportunity to submit your application in audio, video, or written format. If Smarty Grants isn't accessible to you, please contact us or Arts Access Victoria. We'll see shortly how they can offer support. And we'll be happy to discuss other options. These other options can include a Word document, Auslan videos, or an audio file. We're pleased that Arts Access will be supporting applicants who are deaf and disabled with the application if submitted if requested. Many of us find funding applications a challenge, especially when it's new to people. Their traditional format can be a particular barrier for people with specific access needs. Our aim is to remove some of these barriers to people advancing in for people advancing in their arts or research practice. To receive support with your applications, you can contact Dr. Margaret Mayhew from Arts Access Victoria. Margaret is the Specialist Projects Associate. Margaret is an experienced arts worker, a queer visual artist, performer, and arts and cultural researcher. They have worked and researched in community-centered access and inclusion advocacy since 2019. And we are actually going to hear directly from Margaret via a short video they made.
Hello, my name is Margaret. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and I live and work on unceded Wurundjeri land, which is where I'm recording this video. So I'm sitting in front of the Arts Access Victoria background, which has little colourful triangles. You can see the Arts Access Victoria logo and in large letters saying staff. That's because I work at Arts Access Victoria in training and development. So we're working with the State Library Victoria to make sure that the fellowships are accessible to deaf and disabled people who want to apply. So if you are deaf and or disabled and you need support to prepare your application, then I can help. So this includes, or may include, looking at a draft of your application to check that it is okay, or helping to compile support material to support your application, or helping to complete your form. Now this may include preparing either video or audio or Auslan responses to the application form. So if you are deaf or disabled and you would like support with your application, then please contact me, that's Margaret, at Arts Access Victoria. The easiest way would be to email, and my email address is mmmayhew@artsaccess, which is one word, artsaccess.com.au, or you can phone Arts Access Victoria on either 0396998299, that's voice only, or if you prefer text or voice, 0401224864. So I'm part-time, so if you call either of those numbers, please leave your name, your best contact number, and the best time to call you back. And I will call you back from a private number. So we can also arrange either a video call via Zoom, and we can also arrange an Auslan interpreter if you would like to communicate with me via Auslan. So I hope this information is helpful, and we're looking forward to supporting you with your applications. Okay, bye.
Great, thank you, Margaret. Margaret's honestly a very friendly and such a helpful person, so don't hesitate to reach out. We also have some measures involved if you successfully receive a fellowship that can support your access needs. So in the application process, you can apply for an extra $1,000 to support your access needs. This money can be used for things like transport, interpreters, equipment, or anything else that will support your access to the program. This video that Margaret that we've just seen will be up on our website along with the contact information. So if you didn't get it all down now, you can just access it from the fellowship website as well. Yeah, so who are the fellowships for? Talking about eligibility. Here we go. So we're inviting artists, writers, storytellers and educators, researchers and creatives in a wide variety of art forms and research areas to apply. We are open to a range of ideas from people from diverse backgrounds. We encourage applicants from people who are Indigenous, Aboriginal or First Nations, culturally and linguistically diverse, deaf or those who identify with a disability, LGBTQIA+, or members of marginalised communities. So we have our eligibility criteria. A lot of our criteria is around making certain dates. So if you're able to make the actual residency dates, it's kind of within a 12-month period. Our fellowship residencies are kind of based off 3 months workload within that 12-month period. That can be taken all at once or spread across. It's pretty flexible in a lot of ways. The other eligibility, you have to be over 18 years old. You have to live in Australia or reside. And if you are applying for a regional fellowship, which we have 3 on offer, you must live in regional Victoria. You must be able to attend the induction in person at the library on either Thursday the 26th of June or Friday the 27th of June. And we have an announcement and photo call on the 24th of June. So those dates are also up on our website, and they're good to note when you're applying to make sure you're available for those dates. So you're not eligible if you are claiming paid study leave from your workplace to attend the residency. Your project is supported by university-derived funding. Your project is part of examination requirements towards a degree or similar qualification. We've had a few questions already from students and PhD candidates. Students and PhD candidates are more than welcome to apply. This criteria, it's about your proposal or project cannot contribute to an accredited degree. If you are a PhD student and you want to do something similar, that's okay. It just cannot contribute to a accredited degree in any sort of way. That's kind of what that eligibility is getting at, if that makes sense. So we have 4 criterias that we base our assessment process off. And these are really good to be keeping in mind and to read thoroughly when you're writing your application, because this is really what we measure our assessment process off. The first is creative merit. So projects that demonstrate creativity and originality will stand out. We're looking for artistic, creative, or research concepts that show a well thought through idea and innovative approach. The second criteria is linked to the library or library collection. So this second criteria is a proposal that engages with the collection, the nature of what a library is, and or the library site and spaces, or any combination of these 3. It's really good to identify specific collection items or topics within your proposal. We have very expansive ideas of kind of what the library collection, linking it to the library collection can mean. Like the architecture itself could be part of that kind of collection. So we'll hear from Bridie Flynn later on, who's going to talk a bit more about library liaison and access to the collection. And feel free to ask some questions in Q&A as well about that. The third criteria is applicant experience. So in the application, we'd like you to outline how your experience and skills, whether lived experience or professional or academic, will help you carry out your proposed project. These might be research skills, artistic skills, community knowledges, and connections. We don't have any specific requirements, experience requirements or qualifications for these fellowships, and there is a whole range of kind of experience that can be really valid and contribute to your application. And it is really good for this criteria to support your application with supplementary information. There's a few moments in the application where you can upload things like a CV. You can upload images, links to websites if you have one, articles or publications like artworks, sound bites, music, any kind of past work, things that would be relevant to your proposal and that really shows that you have had experience working in similar projects or guess what your experience has been. So there's lots of opportunities within the application process to get some supplementary documents. Number 4, the final criteria is library and community benefit. So the 4th criteria is about benefits for the community and the library. We'd like you to describe how your project might benefit or engage the needs and interests of your community or others. How will it help the community connect with the library or build and enrich the collection? There's so many different ways to go about this. In the actual application, you kind of, there's a section about kind of outcomes, ideal outcomes or potential outcomes. Showcasing your work to the public is important to us. And while some fellowships might result in a public-facing outcome at the library, such as a display or program, decisions about outcomes are made separately to the awarding of the fellowship. And it isn't as offered as a confirmed component of the fellowship being awarded. So what I'm saying there is that successful applicants, you receive the grant, a space to work, community of support during your residency, and opportunities to share work in progress. But decisions on outcomes are kind of made separately to that. Yeah, I think that's it. And the last thing I'm going to talk about before I hand over is just quickly on how our assessment process works and our selection process. Applicants are assessed internally first by library staff and based on subject matters. So we have from different departments, such a range of knowledge kind of assessing these applicants. Shortlisted applicants are reviewed by independent selection panel with representatives from the State Library. The assessors on the internal and external fellowship selection committee are a culturally diverse group with a wide range of subject expertise. For the Bolton Studio residencies, which you'll hear more from Marcus later, are assessed by the Bolton Studio Selection Committee. The Redmond Barrier Fellowship is assessed in partnership with the University of Melbourne. And then there's the George Moore Fellowship, which is assessed by the George Moore Board and Committee. So yeah, I guess those are the 3 fellowship areas that have additional assessments, so the Bolton Studio Fellowships, the Redmond Barry, and the George Moore. Enough of me. I'd now like to introduce Tara Prowse. Tara Prowse is the Public Programs Manager of the Library, and Tara was going to briefly talk to you about key dates and outline the actual fellowships that are on offer. So just a nice welcome to Tara, please.
Thanks, Eric. Very clearly explained. Fantastic. So yes, I'm the Public Program Manager here at State Library Victoria. And I'll give you a bit of an overview of key dates to keep in mind, and then I'll briefly talk through each of the fellowship categories that are available this year to give you an idea of the variety of what's available. And then you can read about some of the finer details of each fellowship on the website at your own pace, and there are some excellent examples there of the previous recipients of each fellowship category as well. And lastly, on behalf of the Victorian Indigenous Research Centre, I'll talk briefly about the cultural protocols for the fellowships program. Key dates. So applications are currently open. They opened on the 4th of Feb, and they will close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 21st of March. In addition to the Arts Access Victoria-led info session, which we did yesterday, this on-site session today are both live streamed and recorded, so you should be able to go back and access all of this information afterwards. Once all applications are in on the 21st of March, the assessment and selection process will take place as Eric outlined. Successful applicants will be notified around early June. This information is under embargo until the official announcement, which happens on the 24th of June. And unsuccessful applicants will also be informed shortly afterwards, after we've notified all the successful applicants. Inductions for the fellows, as Eric spoke through, for 2025 will take place on Thursday the 26th and Friday the 27th of June. So that is part of the eligibility criteria of being available on those dates. And the available residency period is between the 1st of July 2025 and the 19th of June 2026. Fellows have access to their beautiful office just off the dome for the full 12 months. We don't expect the fellows to be on site the entire time or working on your projects full time, and we encourage a balance of time and consider how the funding supports your research and the creative work that you want to do. You might want to work for an intense period of time, as Eric said, over a few months, or part-time across the year. So how you use that space, how you access the resources is up to you, and the kind of design of the way you want to use that year. So I'll go over the different ones that are on offer, and then we can circle back to any questions that people might have on these. So first on the list is the Berry Family Fellowship. This fellowship is awarded for a project exploring an aspect of the social history of Melbourne or Victoria. And there is one of these fellowships on offer this year. The next category is the Creative Fellowships, which always have a lot of applications each year. And this category is a chance for artists, researchers, writers, dancers, performers, or musicians to go wild with the library's collections and or in response to the site itself. Our two creative fellows will have the chance to create a new work in any medium, write a book, create an artwork, or plan an immersive experience. Next we have the Climate Futures Artist Fellowships, which had its inaugural year last year, and we're excited that this is the second iteration of this program. So here we invite two artists working in any art form to imagine a future where art and climate intersect in meaningful ways. You'll be a creative, cultural, or thought leader, and your creative work will be integral to your community, helping to shape the future of art in an era defined by dramatic climate change. There's two of those fellowships available this year. Next, we have the Children's Storytelling and Literature Fellowship, of which there is an amazing areas of the collection open for research. Storytelling for children is an ancient tradition that can take many forms. A project for the Children's Storytelling and Literature Fellowship could include writing, illustration, music, oral storytelling, or a physical experience for children, and we're looking for a captivating idea that celebrates the art of storytelling by, for, and with children. We have one Carey Hall Fellowship for Performing Arts, which supports creatives, artists, and writers from regional Victoria specifically in the field of theatre or performing arts. Research can focus on any area or topic. Collections that could be of interest include script writing, production, drama, opera, ballet, musical theatre, vaudeville, magic. There's an incredible magic collection at the library. Puppetry, festivals and events and more. It's an extensive collection. Another opportunity for artists and researchers living regionally is the Marion Orme Page Regional Creative Fellowship. This offers the chance to create new work in any medium for an exciting creative projects, and applicants for this fellowship as well need to reside in regional Victoria. The Redmond Barry Fellowship is jointly sponsored by the Library and the University of Melbourne, so your research should use the collections in both institutions. We encourage projects here that highlight linkages between the collections and promote new insights on the subject or material. We'll add here that the University of Melbourne archives and special collections PDF to the website to give you an idea of the breadth of that collection. It is one of the largest groups of collections at the university. We're also offering again this year the John Emerson Research Fellowship. Is for a project on England in the early modern period. The John Emerson collection comprises more than 5,000 books and pamphlets from the 15th to 18th centuries, and you can explore this collection in Beyond the Book, which is an online exhibition available via the library's website. It's a digital journey through the treasures of this Emerson collection, and we'll add a link to that as well afterwards. The final one that I'll just touch on briefly, and then you'll hear later from the two speakers. So we have guest speakers from Balderson Studio and Georges Mora Fellowship here today. So you'll hear from them directly about the Amore Residency, the Tate Adams Memorial Residency, and the Georges Mora Fellowship. So the following is a message from Maxine Briggs, who is the Curry Librarian based at the Victorian Indigenous Research Centre at the library. The Victorian Indigenous Research Centre is a community-driven initiative. It is a dedicated space for Indigenous people, supporting their access to the collection and services and programs, and a visible acknowledgement of their culture in the library. We thank Maxine Briggs, Curry Librarian, and the VIRC staff for their wealth of Indigenous Aboriginal cultural knowledge, advice and guidance around cultural protocols, and the Victorian cultural practices for the fellowship program. To go over a few of these cultural protocols, which are also available on the website, if your application has an Indigenous Australian, Victorian Aboriginal focus or content, you'll need to meet with the Victorian Indigenous Research Centre Curry Librarian before you apply. You can make an appointment between Tuesday the 4th of February and the closing date on the 21st of March by contacting the VIRC support officer or emailing VIRC, and we will make those emails and phone number available afterwards, and they're also on the website. You will also be required to show your connection to the relevant community before submitting your application. So this could be either in the form of a letter of support from an Indigenous Australian Aboriginal organisation or a joint fellowship application with an Indigenous Australian Aboriginal applicant. It is ideal to have your letter of support by the time you meet with VIRC. However, if you have not yet received it, please feel welcome to reach out to VIRC regardless. As we all understand, observing and following cultural protocols is necessary to ensure the cultural integrity of a project. Thank you very much. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you so much, Tara. So we had a slide on as well, just kind of reiterating the point of cultural protocols. If your proposal has Indigenous and First Nations content to it, making an appointment with VIRC and showing a connection to the community via a letter of support. Next up, I'm really, really excited to introduce Dr. Amara Rahim, the 2024 Creative Fellow, to speak about her fellowship project, Residency Practices, a field guide for artists in residence, and her experience during her fellowship. Amara is a creative practitioner, researcher, dancer, educator, and writer. Having completed a doctorate at RMIT University in the School of Architecture and Urban Design, their research explores artist-in-residence as a choreographic and design tool. Amara has lectured in dance at VCA, undertaken a year-long residency with the reputable Chunky Move, and was selected for the ABC Top 5 Arts program. Please join me in welcoming Amara to the stage.
Hi everyone. Very nice to see you all here today. So I'm Amara and my pronouns are she, her. And as Eric said, I'm a choreographer and a performer and a researcher and a writer. And the list could go on actually, but I'll just stop there. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be a creative fellow here at the State Library of Victoria. It's such a well-supported opportunity on a number of levels, and it just gives me time to really dive deeply into, well, a really small aspect of the enormous and extraordinary collection that's held here in the library. And it also has become an opportunity for me to spend time listening and looking for the gaps and the silences and the shadows in the archive. In a very small book that I really love called Writing Dance by the choreographer Jonathan Burrows, he writes, "At some point in the history of dance, we began to speak of the body as archive. When it finally got recognized that dancers carry their library with them, but what a mess that library turned out to be." In my practice, I work with movement and language. And for me, working with archives and working with dance has quite a lot in common in that my experience of both of them is that they're both fantastically unstable and hard to grasp. So I think Eric mentioned that I was in residence at Chunky Move, but that's not quite correct. Actually, before this fellowship, I had another fellowship, and I've come to think of these years of my life as the season of fellowships. I was the Frank Van Straten Fellow at the Art Centre in Melbourne, where I worked with the Chunky Move collection. So for those of you that are interested in performing arts, as these are highly competitive fellowships, just to let you know that there's another performing arts collection that you could possibly be interested in working with. And some of the questions that emerged during my fellowship there at the Art Centre that are ongoing in this fellowship here are like a choreographic inquiry into, let's say, reenactment or replay. And reenactment is when there's a performance, let's say, but it could be something else. But in this example, it's a performance. And that happened at a certain point in history, and we decide to reenact it. And this is a very interesting thing to do. It brings up a whole lot of questions between time past and time present. And in 2024, there was a symposium in Glasgow in Scotland called the Playing It Again Symposium. And they posed the following questions, which I found really helpful, because one of the things that you have to think about in your application is not just which aspects of the collection you'd like to work with, but also what are some of the strategies that you might be approaching your research. So for me, a guiding question as a choreographer, what does it mean to replay something, an event, a film, a history, a politics, a building, a body, a set of gestures, an earth, a life, a landscape, became like this overarching question that I've been actually working with for several years. I'm going to share with you one of the outcomes of my. I'm still in the middle of this fellowship, so they're here at the State Library. So I don't really have any outcomes to share with you from this fellowship, but from the Frank Van Straten Fellow, we made this. So this is Anthony Hamilton. Some of you may know who this is. Anthony is the current artistic director and co-CEO of Chunky Move, which is a major contemporary dance company here in Naarm, in Melbourne. And Anthony is a friend and a peer, and I collaborated with him. I asked him to come in. I told him I was looking at the Chunky Move archive, which he was very interested in. And I asked him if he would like to replay something, if he would like to reenact a work from the archive. And he chose this work, actually. It's originally was choreographed by the then artistic director and founder of Chunky Move, called Gideon Aubergenik. And it's called Corrupted 2, and it was made in 1996. And for those of you in the room that remember 1996, that was a time in the tech world when terms such as error, alteration, unusable, overwriting, and system crash would just appear on our computers. And these words became new dance vocabulary. And Anthony wasn't actually in the original version of this work, but he was asked to restage it in 2002. And he hasn't performed it since then, for the last 23 years. And he was just so happy with himself that he could still dance the work. So when I approach archives, of course, when I look at the objects in the collection here at the State Library, oh, that's me talking. You'll get two of me. When I'm looking at the archives, of course my eye is drawn to who or what is in this frame. And here when I look at the objects, I see tone, I see texture, sound, light, color, atmosphere, the setting of the painting or the video, the landscape. But equally as important for me when I look at an object in an archive is who or what is behind the frame. For example, who is making this video? Whose hand-eye is behind the camera? And what else is happening in this moment of time that's not captured in the document, or at least that I can't see or hear? Well, the person behind this video is called James Wright, and he's a videographer who has recorded almost every dance work that Chunky Move has made in the last 15 years, and he's recorded all of the work that Anthony has made. And when I thought about making a video, Anthony recommended James for the job, and because of James's own history with Chunky Move, I was really interested to work with him. And in our email correspondence, James, of course, he wanted to know how to set up the room, how to set up the camera, what is it that we wanted to record. And I want to read to you an excerpt from one of the emails that I sent him, because I think it gives you an idea of the approach that I'm interested in. I wrote, Anthony and I met yesterday in the studio, and what we've come to is that we'd like you to video not so much a finished outcome, as in a staged, polished dance work, but rather the process of remembering a dance work in rehearsal. The movement material is actually only about 2 minutes long, but Anthony is learning it from video, and this is what we'd like to capture: the back and forth of remembering and forgetting, and the repetitive motion of returning to something that is then changed in the act of redoing. maybe what I mean is I'd like you to capture the process of complicating time. So the last thing I might say about the last thing I will say now is that my research here at the State Library is exploring artist colonies, communes and camps in the late 19th century and early 20th century in Melbourne. And I'm interested in artist colonies offering an alternative narrative to the history of art. And also, I feel that artist colonies created the ground for what we now call artists in residence. I'm certainly interested in the art that was made in that time and under those conditions, which were mainly paintings. But most importantly, I'm fascinated by the art of gathering, how artists came together in a very chaotic, grassroots, unorganized way, living in houses such as Heidi, on the banks of the Birrarung, and that at that time, the Australian First People language was totally silenced and the word Birrarung didn't really exist in any of the documents. I like to read of the gardening and the swims and the picnics of those days and nights of love and work and debauchery and hubris, of privilege and ostentation and the terrible envy and hate, and how these utopias were built and then came crashing to the ground, and how beyond the frame of these idyllic settings was a great world war beginning in Europe. And also beyond the frame is the complex relationship between the establishment of Melbourne as a British colony and the relationship to artist colonies at the time, of how the two collided and also entangled and laid the ground for what Melbourne is known for, which is its unique art world identity as a very cool, very artsy, bohemian, culinary, literary, musical, political, social, and I believe most livable city in the world. So I think I'll just leave it there, and I wish you all the best in your applications and in your research and your projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amaro. Thank you for showing us some really exciting and fresh ways to kind of activate an archive. Really, really amazing. Yes, you did. Here you go. Next, I'd like to invite up Bridie Flynn, the Senior Collection Curator in the Victorian and Australian collections here at the State Library. Going to give us some really helpful and useful information. So, welcome, Bridie. Just there, you.
Thank you. It's almost a pity to take over from Amara there. Tara and I were just saying, oh no, let her keep talking, please. So thank you, and it's lovely to have everybody here. It's a lot of information to take in, so it's great that this is being recorded for you. I have a great photo here of the librarians and broader staff at the library, taken back in 1998, and some of whom are still working here today. It's really amazing. So I'm just going to give you an overview of the role of the liaison librarian. Each successful fellow is introduced and connected with a librarian as their friendly point of contact. We will help you find your feet and support you to become an independent researcher. In the next slides, I'm just going into a little more detail about what we do and don't do. So the fellow and librarian pairing may find they connect in different ways depending on the needs and experience of the fellow or the research topic. Some examples of how the liaison role may support you. After you have your introductory meetings, you may wish to continue scheduling periodic catch-up meetings. The librarian may be able to provide you with some additional tips on research strategies specific to your project or to help develop your skills. They can provide you some insight and advice regarding the scope or format of collections and access to those particular collections. They might suggest to you some useful library services that the fellow can draw upon during the period of time, anything from tours or copying service or conservation advice. They may provide you with an introduction or a referral for you to other library staff with relevant experience in a subject area or process, because we all have our strengths in different areas. So this one is a little of a negative one, but I just want to be clear so that we can set your expectations on the role and understand what the liaison doesn't do. Unfortunately, they're not a research assistant for you. The role isn't there for catalogue searches or retrieving books or making copies of material. Not available for on-call assistance throughout the fellowship or for very intensive training sessions. We can't do your project planning or logistical support, editing, proofreading or IT support. And we can't always act as a connection to external contacts or organisations outside of the library. That's one of those it depends kind of questions. We just like to be clear on those. But in saying that, the liaison role is something that the librarians and myself, I get to do it as well. We really enjoy this. And it's seeing Amara's example as well is the kind of thing we get to witnessing creatives and researchers following those deep dives and those pathways through the collections, and just seeing them being used and explored and then shared more broadly is just fantastic for this program. So I really encourage you to get started early now with exploring the library's resources. And then again, if you were awarded a fellowship, just get right in there, make the most of your research and your experience at the library. We have nearly 100 research guides on all sorts of topics, anything from bushfires to AFL. The State Library has a YouTube channel, which is another great deep dive, with many videos and playlists that explore our collections and subject matter experts. We have a great What's On calendar on the library where you can book into things like tonight, these events, tours and talks, workshops to learn more about the library and our collections and hear from those experts. And a quick note about collection access, which is too much to talk about right now because of the size and the complexity of our collections. The way you access our collections does really vary on what you're asking to access. So we do have a whole webpage on the library under the search area, and it's called Using the Library's Collection. This goes into great tips on how to use the catalogue, how to request material, and the delivery timelines, which do vary. The catalogue is going to be your new best friend for all things collection access. So thank you and good luck with your applications.
Thank you so much, Bridie. Yeah, really great prompt to kind of get started now on your research. And if I go back a slide, these are some great kind of resources to look into. But next up, I'm really delighted to introduce Marcus O'Donnell, a committee member at Balderson Studio. Marcus is an artist, writer, academic, and has worked as a leader in higher education. O'Donnell's creative practice spans across a range of traditional and digital print media, multimedia printmaking, and abstract photography. Marcus has been deeply involved in Balderson Studio and is here today to give you valuable advice and insight into the 2 printmaking fellowships. Welcome, Marcus.
Thanks, Eric. So as Eric said, I'm here to talk about the Balderson Studio Fellowships. Balderson Studio is a very unique printmaking studio, art community. It's in St Andrews near King Lake, about 50 miles out of Melbourne, about an hour out of Melbourne. It is actually the studio that George Balderson built for his own studio. George Balderson was a fairly prominent Melbourne artist in the 60s and 70s who died quite young. And in 2000, his widow, Tess Edwards Balderson, opened the studio up to be an education and access studio. So we welcome artists of all kinds to make prints, both very traditional ones, and you can see Chris Ingham creating an etching. We also are very well known nationally and internationally for our connection between digital and traditional printmaking. So we regard ourselves as a place of innovation where printmaking comes alive and we do things that haven't been done before. And in essence, that's why we're interested in supporting a fellowship like this, because it's a unique opportunity for artists to have access to the incredible collection of the State Library, and then also to have access to the facilities that we have at Balderson. So it's a great combination. You can see here Nick and Saoirse, who were our 2023 fellows, and they are actually featured in an exhibition that's on at the moment at the Print Council, and you can go and visit that exhibition and see the outcomes of their fellowship. That's down in Stewart Street in South Melbourne, just near the VCA. The fellowship is supporting an artist for a year like the other fellowships. It comes with a $5,000 artist fee and then $5,000 for materials and services that you can access the things that Balderson offers. So we have very large presses that you can work on. We have accommodation, we have workshops. You might want to explore a different kind of printmaking to the printmaking that you're used to. We do all sorts of things from etching to lithography to digital printmaking. And we've become specially known for the photogravure process. And then at the end of the fellowship, there's an opportunity to have an exhibition at the Print Council of Australia. So there is actually, in these fellowships, a guaranteed outcome. So that's just a new relationship. It's the first one that we're having right now, and we're very thrilled to be able to make that a part of this fellowship package. I've sat on the application panel at Balderson for a number of years now, and I guess the piece of advice that I would give to applicants who are interested in these fellowships is to really make the connection with your project between the collection in the library and the opportunities for printmaking at Balderson. In the past, we've seen applications that on the one hand might have been fantastic ideas about printmaking, but didn't really have a developed idea about how the library was going to connect with that. Or on the other hand, a great idea about researching something in the library, but not a very clear idea about how there was a printmaking or an artistic outcome. So to think very carefully about the connections between your printmaking outcome or your artistic outcome and your use of the collection and resources in the library. And I guess the other piece of advice that I would give is come and talk to us. Come and see the studio, come and see what is there and what we can offer. So email our studio manager, August Carpenter, and she can either make a time for you to visit, take you on a Zoom tour, or arrange for one of the Committee of Management members like myself to have a conversation with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Our final speaker for tonight is Evelyn Matheny. Evelyn is from the George Mora Board, talking on the Georges Mora Fellowship. So welcome, Evelyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. The all-important clicker. I'm Evelyn Matheny. I'm a board director at Georges Mora Fellowship, and I'm really pleased to share with you information about the fellowship benefits and selection process. The fellowship itself is named after Georges Mora, who is an entrepreneur, restaurateur, and art dealer whose commitment to developing and promoting contemporary art saw him produce outstanding exhibitions and featuring local and international artists, including people like Charles Blackman, Arthur Boyd, Joy Hester, Sidney Nolan, and so many more. Georges died in 1992, and his wife, Caroline Williams, established this fellowship a number of years ago in his honor. This fellowship is awarded each year to a contemporary artist who's demonstrated excellence in their established field, in their artistic field, to really support them to engage fresh thinking and to research new possibilities in their art. The fellowship provides financial support, residency opportunities, and access to organizations and individuals with specialist knowledge to support the artist to research, experiment, and create. We do expect some form of public outcome to culminate the fellowship. In order to achieve this, the fellowship aims to provide maximum flexibility and autonomy to each chosen fellow in their use of the resources of the State Library of Victoria and elsewhere, and in their presentation of the outcome of their research and interpretation. So we don't have any particular expectations of what that public outcome actually looks like. So there is a lot of flexibility in that. The fellowship itself is awarded with funds that have been generously donated by supporters and with the incredible resources of the State Library of Victoria. In 2025-26, we are offering one fellowship for the 12-month period with a grant of $10,000. The fellow can choose to fulfill their residency at the State Library of Victoria. This is repeated, we've heard from others, so it can be full-time or part-time. And you have the freedom to undertake other residency during this period as well. It's open, now this is a slight difference, it's open to any Australian citizen or permanent resident who has continuous commitment to the field of contemporary art. Artists at all stages of their career can apply, so we don't have an age limit. If you have, and just to note that if you have previously applied to Georges Mora for the fellowship, you need to submit a new project proposal. The selection process basically is as follows. The applicants are shortlisted by the Georges Mora board. Then we put together an independent panel of recognized arts and cultural professionals, as well as people included from the State Library of Victoria, who then select the fellow. In the selection process, there are a number of things that we take into consideration. So it's the artist's past work, whether this work has demonstrated excellence in their artistic field.
if the fellowship project will extend the boundaries of the artist's practice in new and significant ways. The George Mora Fellowship seeks an artist who has shown continuous commitment to the field of contemporary art and who really wishes to challenge their practice. You do need to apply, submit a written application with supporting visual references electronically, and the selection criteria that we use include standard of work, your reason for applying, your professional experience, and availability to undertake the fellowship. We really seek to honor George Mora's legacy as a catalyst for growth by igniting courage and supporting fresh thinking in the arts. To date, we have had 15 fellowships granted to some amazing artists. So we really welcome your nomination to choose this group to become the 16th fellow. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we have some time for questions and answers. So I'm going to invite all our speakers back up to come take a seat. And if you wanted to have a question that you'd like answered, now's the time. We have two of our wonderful, we have one roving mic, so they'll come to you. You just simply raise your hand and we'll get to you when we can. We also have people viewing on the live stream, so we have some questions on Slido that I'll also be reading out and trying to bounce in between. So maybe I'll start with a question online. Will international applicants be considered? Will there be supporting letters for a visa application to Australia? And can you elaborate on the accommodations? Tara, maybe if you had a response to about international applicants.
Yeah, absolutely. So the criteria for the State Library Victoria fellowships are that you need to be residing in Australia. So it's not tied to citizenship or permanent residency, but you do need to be residing in the country here. So I think, yeah, we're not able to support with visa requirements in that case.
Is it correct that the John Emerson fellowship is open to international applicants, but the rest, a requirement is that you reside in Australia. Are there any questions from the audience? Just down here.
I'm in one of those difficult positions. I can't decide which one to go for, which category to go for. Can you put into the same thing into more than one category?
I will answer that. No, you can't. So you have to make your choice. We're happy to have a chat if you're kind of undecided about which category might fit your application or your idea. But yes, it's one application per category.
Yeah, so Tara is correct that you can only apply to one category. We do this year have a box that you can tick where your application may be considered for other fellowship categories at our discretion, like in the sense that if you were unsuccessful in the category you apply for, but in the assessment process we think you might apply for another category, there is a box in the application that you can tick to allow that. But yeah, like Tara said, it's only one application, one process. One category. We have a question over there. While we get to that question, I'll read a Slido question. Are you able to share the weighting of each assessment criteria, please? I'll start with Tara, but maybe I'll also talk to Marcus and Evelyn about the way you weight criteria, or Marcus for Balderson. Tara, how are the criteria weighted?
So the 4 criteria for the State Library Fellowships are all equally weighted. So we review each of those criteria equally.
Yep.
Yes, it's very similar for the way we review the applications, and as I said, we're looking for strengths on all of the applications. So it's no use being strong on one and not on others.
Great. Maybe we'll go to the question over here. That was someone raised their hand. Yep.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for a very interesting night. It's been really great to hear from each one of you people. My question is to Borderson Press. Included in a successful applicant, do you get the help of the staff such as Chris or Sylvia if you're using a technique you're not quite sure of in printmaking?
Yeah, that's absolutely can be part of the fellowship. That $5,000 services and materials fee can be used to buy in the expertise of one of our amazing teachers, and that's often how fellows choose to use some of that money.
Great. I have a question on here, and Bridie, I think if we can get the mic to you, this might be your question. Are we expected to check out the collection we are interested in studying before submitting the application? And maybe just...
check as in have a look at it?
Have a look at it in person, or...
Yeah, I thought for a second that was borrowing, and I was going to say, we're not a lending library.
No
Can't
borrowing,
check it out in that respect. Look, I think if that is a key resource that you're building your application on, that it's probably a good idea to maybe have a look at it if it's an extensive resource, or to see if there is enough kind of juice in there to cover your application. I suggest if you've got the chance, come in and have a look at the collections, for sure.
Yeah, and we have some questions from the audience. Maybe this person in the centre here, and we'll get to the two at the front. Yep.
Hi, thanks. Could you expand on the no university funding situation a little bit, in the sense of if you are a lecturer, is that okay, but you're not, I'm assuming it's like you're not actively receiving an internal grant for the project, or an external grant? Could you just,
Yeah, how you explained it is
specifics?
kind of correct. If there is external funding that is directly funding your proposal from a university, that will not be eligible. So in terms of like a PhD funding for a project from a university, that that will not be eligible. If you are a lecturer at a university receiving a salary or a wage, you are more than welcome to apply. That does not make you ineligible. If you are a PhD student as well, receiving funding from university, and your proposal is separate, then that is also acceptable. We had a question here.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Thanks for a really insightful evening. I just want to ask, as stated, you said initially it's all applicants are assessed by library staff, and then the shortlisted by an external body or a body put together. If you aren't successful, do you get given feedback, or do you get advised that you were on the shortlist? Do you get any feedback in regards to your application, successful or otherwise?
Tara, I might throw that one to you.
Yeah, happy to. We do get a large volume of applications every year, so unfortunately we would love to have conversations with everybody, but we aren't able to provide that individual feedback. So no, you wouldn't necessarily know whether you made it to the shortlist and to the external committee at that stage.
But if you're not successful, you're welcome to build on the application again the next year and have another go at it with a stronger application.
And we have a question down at the front here.
Thanks for taking my question. I'm just wondering, are regional applicants tied to numbers 7 and 9, Kerry Hall Fellowship and Marion Orme Page Fellowship?
Regional applicants can apply to any of the categories.
Any of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
those are tied for regional participation.
I see,
So they're
okay.
specifically for. So you have to have a regional address and live regionally to be
Right.
able to apply for those.
Yeah.
But you can apply for any of them.
We have another question at the front, but I might just have from a Slido. Can you explain more or revisit what the library liaison does? And then the second part of this question is interesting. Can non-fellowship winners or / ordinary library users access similar assistance?
Oh, well, you won't get a dedicated librarian assigned to you, unfortunately, for everybody. But you can always come in. We have a reference desk staffed when the library's open, so come in and you can do that in person, or you can phone, or you can submit an online form. It's something called Ask a Librarian, and those get triaged through to a librarian with a special skill set to answer your questions. So yeah, absolutely, you can always ask for help on collections. That way you don't need to be a fellow. I think probably with the liaison role, to reiterate, I think it's a support role. It's not an assistant role, so we can help you navigate the complexities of the library a little bit and help you find your way around and help build your confidence in using the research processes at the library.
Yes, of course.
When I was in the application process, I got in touch with one of the librarians here at the State Library. And I have to say that they are so helpful. I would really recommend, if you have the time and you're not so clear about, because I didn't quite know how to find the artist residencies in the collection. And so when I spoke to the librarian, they were really able to go, oh, you're looking at this time period. How about you look at this? And so then I used all of that information in my application. So it's just really worth the investment of, and if you're not successful and you're really keen to do the project, it's a public library. Wi-Fi is free. You can come in. You can use the spaces. You can talk to the librarians. The stipend of $15,000 is really helpful, though. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Angelique, was there more questions? Maybe the person just there?
Hi.
And there's someone here as well.
Oh,
We'll go, yep.
thank you all again. I was wondering if y'all could speak on the desired experience that an applicant might have. I know there's no specific requirements, but maybe generally, do successful applicants typically have advanced degrees or previous fellowships? Or
Maybe we'll start with Tara if you wanted to answer about applicant experience.
Sorry, was that about kind of professional or experience of the applicant? Okay, of the requirements.
For example, we got to hear from a doctor. Sorry, I wrote down your name, but do most of the fellowship people who are successful, and become fellows, are they doctors?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I would say no, it's open to people from all walks of life who've never engaged in a kind of formal library form of research before, artists whose practice is, perhaps body-based and they've not used a kind of text-based archive, people with community knowledge, people with formal academic knowledge, so absolutely it's open to everyone to access the state collection.
And we consider lived experience as a very valid form of applicant experience, so that's also something to consider. And if you look at our fellows now, there's such a range of experience. Amara, did you have more to say on that?
Well, I was actually just going to say that. I was just talking to one of the fellows, Dex, today, who's designing a graphic novel. And they don't. I think it's really about the clarity of the inquiry, really. And there are alternative forms, aren't there? Like you can make a video, or you can.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so many alternative forms to present your experience. It doesn't just have to be a traditional CV or anything like that. It can be creative work, any sort of past work that you've done. Evelyn, maybe with the George Mora Fellowship, is it what kind of contemporary artists are you also accepting applicants from? Emerging artists, or established artists, or mid-career artists? You've got two.
One of the important things is to show a body of work that has a lot of potential. So you can be an emerging artist. You don't have to be a well-known artist, but we want to see really excellence in your work.
and that you are committed to contemporary art and that you are really pushing your boundaries. And
Yeah, great. And Marcus, how about you answer? Have a go.
Very, very similar to Evelyn. We've had artists at all different stages of their career, but what we're looking for is a very convincing body of work and a track record to some extent in that it shows us that you have a commitment to being an artist.
What about in terms of printmaking experience?
We're very open to accepting applications from artists in other mediums who want to explore printmaking. That's certainly a possibility, but they would have to have a very clear idea about why they want to employ printmaking, how it relates to their work, and why those two things go together.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Angelique, was there another question from the audience? Just quickly before then, I know that there was a really easy... Oh, yep, there's one at the front here and one over here as well. So maybe and one over there. So we'll start with this person at the front. Just before we start though, there was a question, can you apply as an artist duo for the Creative Fellowship? So you can definitely apply as a joint fellowship. So that is 2 applicants applying for 1 fellowship. We have that available for all our fellowships, can be joint fellowships. No more than 2 though, so 2 is the maximum that can apply for 1 fellowship. Now the question at the front here.
Hey, yeah, my question is regarding the Children's Storytelling and Literature Fellowship. What is the particular age group that you're saying is children's storytelling category?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think we've ever been asked that specifically. So I think broadly the collection has some incredible areas of illustrations, beautiful works. I'm at the moment in the World of the Book exhibition that you can see. So we would just think broadly about, I guess, again, both text-based and artistic-based, and also oral storytelling as a form of kind of communication for and with children. So there, in the past, have been fellows who have made work for, and others who have done research into areas of the collection, that look at that. But yeah, we've never been asked about a specific age.
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah. Yes, perfect. Next person. Oh, yep.
Thank you so much, panel, and also for the opportunity to dream an idea. I've got a tricky one, which is it a strength that there's not very much in the library about the particular thing I'm interested in? Because, I'm aware of your comment earlier about how important it is that, it's responding to something in the collection. But I feel like I've been a little detective and looking for needles in haystacks, and maybe I just haven't found the right librarian yet as well. But yeah, I was just sort of wondering if it's I see it as potentially an asset, but also potentially a problem in my application, that it's a really hard thing to find what I'm looking for.
I might say one thing to that and then pass to you, because there's definitely been fellows in the past who are kind of investigating and highlighting gaps in the collection, I guess. And I think sometimes that tells the library a lot about what is and isn't available.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, if you haven't found it yet, or maybe when you're doing research, one thing will lead you to another and you end up on a pathway. But even if your niche area is quite in-depth on something perhaps that's not 20 boxes worth of material or something, there still can be quite riches to be found in a small selection of items. And I think it's probably it depends on what the project and the idea is, but you might get a lot of mileage out of a small representation from the collection. So just work on that, part of the criteria.
Yeah, it can definitely be a strength. It obviously depends, but it's something that can definitely be a strength. Angelique, was there another question? Was the person in the...
Thank you. It's actually a bit of a follow-up to that. Just in terms of tying your research to the collection and how specific you have to get in the application. Obviously, the library is a rabbit warren, and as a researcher, like, you know, one thing leads to the next. Obviously, if you have, you know, a core concept idea that you want to explore, but it may cross over a few different collections for the purposes of the app, how granular, how specific do you have to get in terms of tying it back to what's existing in the collection?
I think it might be good to have a look at some of the previous applicants that are on the website. Maybe that might help as well. It is a definitely, thank you for saying it's a tricky question. It is. I think...
I've read a lot of applicants, like past successful applicants, and it's such a range of different ways that people address that part of the application. Some people have very specific items that they're using that it directly connects to their proposal. Other people have more general topics or general areas, but still have made it a very integral part of the research, their proposal, in the sense that if the proposal needs the research to happen, where applicants maybe are not as strong is when it's just been kind of slapped on as this additional thing, or it's like too general, like Greek mythology, that's too general. And it's also probably note that you don't have to have, it's not really expected that your entire research plan to be formed during the application process. That's kind of what the fellowship is for. So just thinking about starting points, starting areas, thinking about ways of discovery rather than the actual specific items itself.
Yeah, I think maybe I could respond to that as well, which is to say that I haven't read my application for a while, but I think the way that I structured it was, I said, you know, this is my research on artists in residence. I've been looking at this for some time, and now I'm at a stage in my practice where I'd like to look at like what was before artists in residence, which I think is artist colonies, and I'm looking at this particular time period in the collection, and then these are my starting points, and I just made it clear that that was just how I was going to start. And I think also, and this is really, you know, hard to determine, but I think in the selection, I mean, I don't know, because I've never been in the selection panel, but I imagine that there's also an interest in what hasn't been looked at in the collection or for a while. So if you read, you know, the applications or the fellows of the last couple of years, and you're writing an application that's very similar to something that someone's doing now, perhaps it's not as strong. And I sort of recognized from doing some research, not only into the collection, but into what previous applicants had explored, that this didn't seem to be present in that. So I think that was to my advantage, yeah.
I think the key word is starting point. That Amara just used. Certainly in the standout applicants that I've seen, they've given a sense that they have explored the library. They have some concrete things in mind, but then there's a whole broader field that is there for exploration, which of course is going to take 12 months and the rest of their life. But just an indication, a concrete indication.
Excellent points, yeah. Angelique, was there another question from the audience? We have one just at the front here. Just in the second row, yeah.
Thank you. So I have written this down, and it actually builds on this discussion. So from starting points to installation. Can you share some examples of how previous fellows have documented their research process and presented their creative outcomes? So I'm interested in projects that evolved from research into some form of installation and display. So how to kind of balance the application between the generative aspect to the public installation.
Tara, I'm going to pass that to you. Maybe if you can think of examples of an outcome from a fellowship.
I might do, Susie, I might call on you for this as well. And then I'm thinking of some of the amazing Georges Mora outcomes as well. I would say, I guess, just to start with, it's a very self-directed opportunity. So how you structure the year is really up to you. The amazing liaison librarians and our team in audience engagement are definitely there to kind of help shape it and guide, but it's definitely up to the fellow themselves to kind of shape how they want to use that year. And I think, as Amara was saying before, that could be kind of clustered in a couple of intense months or spread out through the year. There's been lots of amazing outcomes over the years, but sometimes they're also many years later. So we had a talk 2 weeks ago from an incredible researcher and historian, Santilla Chingape, who's just released a book called Black Convicts, which I believe her fellowship was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 2018, there you go. So, and that, she's been doing lots of kind of speaking engagements around that book, the majority of which that research was based on her fellowship here. So sometimes these things take a long time. From the library's perspective, we don't have a kind of time frame on that. We want to be kept in the loop. We want to be kind of in continual conversation with the fellows about outcomes as they generate. Equally, we might start conversations with fellows if we've got a particular program or exhibition that we think that their research might contribute to. But that is a separate process to the fellowship itself.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about some of our fellows. We've had a range of outcomes, so performing arts, visual arts. Actually, there was one of our, on the slides that you showed, Ross Coulter, who was one of our early fellows. It was 10,000 airplanes, paper airplanes. So there's no defined outcome, no defined art. Art is how you're defining your art.
Yeah, great. Susie, I'm going to give you a mic. Susie is our senior programmer, also working on the fellowship program.
Hi, everyone. Just to give a few more examples, and definitely have a look, especially at the Georges Mora previous fellowships in terms of installations, but a couple, in addition to the fantastic Ross Coulter 10,000 paper planes, I'm thinking of a photographer called Hayley Miller-Baker, who was looking at survival and camp style, like camping, going on camping trip style photographs and material in the collections, in the State Library collection. And then she developed a series of photographs that ended up as part of the Photo 2020 festival, and her work was on the forecourt, in an installation on the forecourt. Then another one that would be interesting for you to think about is Linda Tegg's Georges Mora Fellowship, which was called, Grasslands. So in terms of that process, the installation Grasslands was quite different to what she originally envisaged, which was growing grasses within the library. So she had, which wasn't quite going to work from the conservation point of view, as well as the fact that there's no sun in the Cowan Gallery where she wanted to do it, so they wouldn't have grown anyway. So the resulting installation was part of quite a long discussion with staff and with our conservation team, and it ended up on the forecourt. So that's a couple of examples.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that for the children. Yeah, so back to the question for children's literature, 0 to 18 years is considered it. So that could also include young adult novels as well as children's books. I think we have time for maybe one last question. Yep, just over here.
Hello, thanks for everything, team. My question is about how do you feel about applications where the applicant, i.e. me, is submitting the application in conjunction with an external institution? Like my publisher wants to support the application. Would you frown upon that? Or what would be this? I don't really know what I'm trying to ask, but like, do you want just an individual, or if I was doing it with a publisher, would that be cool or not cool?
Cool or not cool? I would say applying as an individual would be the preference in terms of the criteria that everybody is responding to. However, if there is, other support that you have, I outline that in the support material.
Yeah. And if it's something like it's a project you're already working on, that is still eligible as well.
Yeah.
But definitely apply as an individual. I think that's kind of it. And that's kind of all we have time for today. So just a big thank you for you all sitting here and coming and spending time to listen. Thank you to all 5 of our presenters. I'm just going to flick to the slide here. Here we go. So if you had a question we couldn't get to, we have our fellows@slv.vic.gov.au email. That's monitored pretty consistently. Maybe not over the weekends, but during the week, we can always get back to your answers. So feel free to send it there. Applications are obviously open currently. So we have our Smarty Grants link. Our frequently asked question is pretty comprehensive. So have a look there as well if you have more information you need provided. And then the top link, that's where you find everything. The SLV/fellowships webpage, all important information is there. I just have a quick slide from Regional Arts Victoria for regional applicants that are seeking support for those specific fellowships for regional Victorians. And thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.